Top of the morning to you, and happy St. Patrick's Day from Helena. We are broadcasting to you from Helena. It's the end of the 10th week. We are trucking through and speeding through a lot of bills, as well as seeing a few new ones. So I'm going to let Chelsea talk about a few, and then we'll skip over to something different.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Hopefully, as you're jumping on here, we'll get some folks to join in the conversation today. And once you join the conversation, please be sure to comment and let us know where you're watching from, because we can see you join, but we don't always know who's in our audience. So let us know where you're watching from, and hopefully everybody's got something green on today. I don't.
I do. Look, green pants.
Yes.
Chelsea has on pink pants.
Yeah, well, you know.
Or red.
Green's not my color. So anyway, comment and tell us where you're watching from, and I hope that it's as much of a beautiful day wherever you are as it is here. It's a beautiful day in Helena, so a good day to be a Friday. A couple things that went on this week in Helena before I jump into bills is there was much discussion on House Bill 2 this week. That is the main budget bill. That's really the meat and potatoes for our state government, and the House has been working pretty hard on it since the beginning of the session. Yesterday, Thursday, they spent the entire day, it was about 7 hours of floor session on House Bill 2. And they did pass it yesterday on second reading, so they will have to vote on it one more time today. Does sound like it came out on a party line vote from the House floor. But before the debate started, we had heard that there were over 130 amendments that had been drafted to House Bill 2. It does not sound like all of those amendments were actually proposed on the floor. Otherwise, I think they may have still been there. But several of them were. I don't know for sure how many, but they did get it done yesterday. So once that bill passes the House, it gets turned over to the Senate, and the Senate Finance and Claims Committee will kind of go through the same process, albeit they get to speed things up a little bit, and they'll go through it again from their perspective, and then the same process will take place on the Senate floor. So that is really what will be the biggest topic as the session kind of begins to wind down the next few weeks, is how the budget will shake out and what will be added at the last minute or maybe removed at the last minute. So that can start to change really quickly over the next few weeks. So a few other bills that we worked on this week. It was a really busy week for Farm Bureau. I think on Tuesday we had 9 bills.
All in different committees. So yeah. We were running everywhere. We made John come up too.
Yes.
So thanks for helping out, John. But we got them all covered. So that was a good thing.
Yes. So very busy. Nice thing for the most part about this part of the session is that the majority of the bills we're working on are repeat bills. They've already been through their first House. They made the transmittal deadline, and now they're going through the motions in the second House. So as long as they're, withstanding any really harmful or hostile amendments that make the bill something we don't like, the process is kind of the same, and so it's easy to just get through them. One of the bills we worked on this week that, speaking of hostile amendments, is House Bill 110. We did talk about this several weeks ago when it was heard in the House, but this is the bill that deals with water rights claims that were historically exempt from the filing process. Now, this is not to be confused with the exempt wells topic or exempt wells legislation, which I will mention later. House Bill 110 deals specifically with certain types of claims that historically were exempt. Those are considered stock water claims or individual domestic use claims that use surface or groundwater sources. So prior to the start of Montana's adjudication process, they were considered exempt from filing. But once we started the adjudication process, it became pretty clear that in order to actually adjudicate all of Montana's water, meaning to actually assign it a place, quantify it, determine who the owner of that water is or who has a right to that water, you need to actually file on all those claims. You can't really be exempt and still be adjudicated. So we're working now to establish a deadline. That deadline is June 30th of 2019 for water users to file those claims with DNRC. Now, those are still exempt from the formal permitting process, so you don't have quite the same hoops to jump through, but it really is in anyone's best interest who had any of these claims to make sure they file that with DNRC. because you don't abandon your water right or lose your water right if you don't file it. But what happens is that through the adjudication process, as we near the end, if more people file claim to that water or water farther down or farther up that source, if you haven't filed with DNRC, you become subordinate or junior to those other rights. So in order to really preserve your quality and quantity and access to that water, it is important to get those claims filed. Now, to the amendment part that is slightly concerning for us. There are fees associated with filing these claims. And historically, those fees were set, well, actually in statute, they are set at $40 a claim. However, for inflationary reasons, DNRC did have to increase those claims over the years, but we feel that they increased them a little exponentially, and the fees for claims are set. It's a good combination, yeah. Are set right now at about $160 per claim. And our concern at Farm Bureau is that we don't want that fee to be so high that it disincentivizes folks from filing those claims. Because it's in your best interest, and because it has not historically been clear whether or not you needed to file those claims, that if you've got 8 stock ponds or water tanks that are fed by a stream, or you get to fill up a dam every spring because of available groundwater and runoff, you need to file on that. So you might have a dozen or more little stock water wells available, stock water spots or wells available that would qualify to be filed on. And so it's important to do that. And we don't think the fees need to be so exorbitant that they serve as a disincentive for water users not to file and potentially risk becoming subordinate to other water users. So we're working on amendments to that. We would like to lower the fee a little bit. We're not going to get it likely back down to the $40, which would be great for everybody, but costs do rise over time. So we are working, though, to find a happy medium and also to make sure that there is a cap. So that at a certain point, if you have reached a certain monetary amount of money, that's it. They don't charge you anymore, and you file the rest of your claims as you need to. So we'll keep you posted on that one. It was heard in the Senate Natural Resources Committee this week, and I know there's amendments coming to it. So hopefully more on that next week.
We see Rhonda just joined. Thanks for joining us,
Hi, Rhonda.
Hope you are doing well and the wind's not blowing too hard there.
It likely is.
It was windy here yesterday, but it's beautiful today.
Yeah. You guys can see all the natural light we're sitting in. It's nice.
It's a little not nice on my face.
Washed out. So our little eye in the sky tells us we have lots of viewers. So please chime in. Let us know where you're watching from. Chime in anytime if you've got questions about the legislative process or maybe a bill we mentioned or haven't mentioned.
Throw your questions out while we're talking about a specific bill too. We can usually, we think, see them as they come in. And just so you know, I've heard from a lot of you that you watch these later. And if you want, you can comment on them later. We try to check back, and Laura keeps us on track too and reminds us if a comment comes in that we don't see. And we can do our best to get back to you. So Chelsea was just visiting about Senate Bill 110, or House Bill 110, I guess. It's by a representative who used to be a senator, so that's a little confusing. But we've talked about the fact that most of the bills that are coming through are repeat bills. There are a few new ones coming through. These are all revenue bills, and they keep us on our toes here at the last. They have money in them, which is why they can come out later than the transmittal deadline. And I'll talk briefly about a few of those. One is Senate Bill 334, and what it does is allow you to permanently register farm trucks, well, any type of truck that's over 1 ton and has a GVW of 55,000 pounds or less, after it's 11 years old. So for us, we support the bill because of our farm trucks, the ones, as I said in my testimony, that are out there in the weed patch, maybe in your machinery lineup, that when you go out to harvest, one of the things you have to get done is get that truck running, maybe wipe the mouse nest off the seat or out of the jockey box, find the paperwork, run to town, get it registered, get home, get everything else going, and then you use it for just a few days a year, whether that's hauling silage from the field to the pit or hauling grain, things like that. These are your your straight trucks or hoist trucks, the older trucks that are not your semi-tractors, things like that. So we support the bill. We think it just makes sense to simplify the process in allowing you to permanently register those after they get to age. It's just one less step to take. It also makes sure that counties get paid for those. Yes, they're going to have kind of a balloon payment at the beginning, and then that revenue tapers off. So there was some concern from the county treasurers on that. Department of Transportation also had some concerns with the bill, and so we're going to be working with the sponsor and the department to come up with something that might not be exactly a permanent registration, but something a little longer term that can at least provide some convenience to you farmers and ranchers out there. So stay tuned. We'll let you know if it gets amended, what happens to it. This bill is very similar to one that was brought by Representative Randall last session. It passed and was vetoed because of the hit to the budget, but this year Senator Moore is really working on making sure it's something workable and something that can get passed. So we look for the process this time. We just got a notification, not on this. So hey, Ricky's watching from the Central Montana Regional Manager Headquarters in Billings.
Her living room. That's what that.
Ricky, are you wearing green? We hope so.
We hope so.
I hope so. I'm kind of the enforcer of green. Even my little baby Cakes was wearing green when he left for the babysitter this morning. So there's some other bills that pop up this time of year are tax bills, of course. And we've been watching a lot of them. There's been some not so good ideas brought up that we've been able to visit with legislators about and get them to kind of hold off on those, especially considering that the legislature keeps talking about adjourning early and saving days so that they can use them later in the year in case they have to come back for some days to address any type of federal law changes. So right now they're looking at, we've heard from multiple people by Good Friday. So that is actually, yeah, no kidding. That's actually, less than a month away now. And so things have to get moving through the process quickly. One bill that came out this week is House Bill 558 by Representative Hertz. And what it does is mitigates the tax reappraisal. So during the reappraisal on the current or past reappraisal cycle, whichever way you want to look at it, ag land and commercial and residential property have all increased in value. So that means that their taxable value also increases. What Representative Hertz bill does is mitigates the tax rate so that basically class 3 and 4, which is 3 is ag, 4 is residential and commercial, it will mitigate those rates so that those two classes or 3 different types of properties will stay approximately taxable value neutral. We support this bill. One thing that we were worried about when we switched to a shorter reappraisal cycle is that perhaps we would see more volatility in our tax bills, property tax bills, because of all of the moving parts. And this bill will help smooth those out and basically leave us with a pretty similar tax bill to what we've had in the past year. So we'll see how that goes. It will face some opposition, probably from both sides of the aisle, but we're working on it, and we're working to make sure that your tax bill remains as steady as possible. So I'm gonna. Oh, we just had a comment.
Yeah.
Oh.
Go home now. Yeah. We'd like to.
Are you saying we should go home now and just leave the legislature to their own devices, or to the legislature?
Some days it feels like that might be the best decision, but the end is in sight. We're getting.
Well, let's change gears back to water on that note.
Yes. So a couple more bills for consideration. Again, one that we've already talked about, but that's coming back around for its second hearing in the Senate, and something that Farm Bureau is very invested in and has worked from since the interim actually to get a piece of legislation on this is in the exempt wells realm and dealing with that issue. That has historically been an issue that has been pretty divisive and something that has a lot of strong opinions on both sides. And ultimately what happens and what has happened over the several previous sessions is that pieces of legislation are brought proposing to deal with exempt wells in the state, and it usually winds up with agriculture in one corner and the building and development industry in the other corner. And so we've tried to come together collaboratively this year and find something that works. Because we know that the building and the development industry really utilize exempt wells to be able to put in developments and housing for people and live in, and likewise agriculture does use exempt wells also, but we need to be very conscious of our state's water resources and make sure that we're using that in the most responsible way. And obviously, if what an exempt well means is that you don't have to get a permit for it. DNRC doesn't necessarily know that well exists, so you're drawing on a water source that really hasn't been appropriated to you. And so that's fine to an extent, but we need to be very conscientious and careful of the concentration and density of these wells and where they exist in our state. So House Bill 339 is going to be heard next Wednesday in the Senate Natural Resources Committee at 3 o'clock. And we will be supporting the bill. What we're doing is limiting, we're using well spacing to limit the density and the concentration of exempt wells. So if you're in a closed basin, an example of that would be along the Gallatin River near Bozeman, where the basin's been pretty well appropriated, and you know how much available water there is on a good general basis year to year. In a closed basin, you would have to keep your wells 660 feet apart in order to utilize exempt wells. Outside of that, in an open basin, so for example, Scobie, Montana, where the basin has been over appropriated, you would only have to keep your wells 330 feet apart. This spacing still works for development. It does limit the amount of wells that can be drilled on certain lots and parcels, but the development community can also utilize shared well agreements because a well is exempt if it utilizes less than 10 acre feet per year and is less than 35 gallons per minute. So you can't have a ginormous well that you're, pumping a pivot off of and have it be considered exempt. It is a very specific quantity of water that allows you to utilize exempt wells. So I would encourage anybody, if you want more information on that exempt wells bill, shoot us a comment here. Get in touch with me. If folks are interested in supporting that bill, find out. I can tell you how to get a hold of your senators. Contact the Senate Natural Resources Committee. If anybody's interested in testifying on that, the hearing is next Wednesday. So that's the other water bill today. Couple other bills that were new this week that they're very similar actually, so they'll be pretty quick to go through. But we worked on Senate Bill 207, which was carried by Senator Eric Moore. And that bill actually dealt a little bit with eminent domain, and when a public utility is being put in through eminent domain, if in that process the utility or the contractors, the surveyors find paleontological remains, so they find a teepee ring, or maybe they find a giant T-Rex if they're lucky. Those finds have to be kept confidential if they're on private lands. Not to mean that you can't then turn it over to a museum or a team of archaeologists to come in and recover those artifacts. But the reason we're supporting this bill is because what happens, or can happen, is those reports by those different surveyors become part, because it's a public utility, they become part of the public record. And you get folks who think they can come help themselves. Trespass becomes an issue on private property because everybody wants to see the artifacts. So not only does this protect private property rights, but it's also a means to probably, add some additional protection for those artifacts, dinosaurs, teepee rings, to be recovered in the way they should be recovered and better preserved for everybody to enjoy. Along those same lines was House Bill 523, carried by Representative Casey Knudsen, and this has to do with work in irrigation ditches. And what this bill does is it states that a state agency cannot require an irrigator to do an archaeological survey to receive a permit to do work on their ditch if they meet a few of the following criteria. As long as it's on their private property, as long as it's a ditch that they've used within the last 10 years, not a new ditch. And lastly, as long as it's within the current and existing easement. So if you're working on an established ditch that's on your private property, they cannot require you to do an archaeological survey. This bill wasn't quite so much about the chance of trying to find or hide these archaeological artifacts as it was a timeliness for irrigators. Because a lot of times if you've gotten a big flood that has come through or something that's happened that has messed up a ditch or a canal system, it can cost you an entire irrigation season if you're waiting for a permit from a state agency to complete the work you need to do to get water back in your fields. So this was just an added measure to try to increase the timeliness of getting those permits received if you're doing that work on your private property. So those were two more bills that we worked on this week. What questions do you guys have out there? We've gotten a few comments, but let us know where you're watching from today.
We don't have a super lot of time.
Yeah,
we both have a meeting at 11 and separate meetings.
Yeah.
And so we probably need to get headed up there pretty soon. One thing I wanted to mention, because it's something kind of different. We always talk to you about bills. There are sometimes times when we go and support resolutions, and one of those that we supported this week that is has already passed the Senate, now is making its way through the House, is Senate Joint Resolution 10, which has to do with the support for the XL Keystone Pipeline. We actually went in and supported that. It's being carried by Senator Lang. The reason our members support that is the building of that pipeline is kind of twofold, but one of the main reasons has to do with the tax realm. When that pipeline goes in, it is going to significantly impact the tax base of those counties in eastern Montana that it goes through. It will provide a much more diverse tax base, basically. It provides a new type of property that can, and definitely will be taxed in those counties. So it will essentially provide property tax relief to the farmers and ranchers in that it goes through. And it just, it will provide a more diverse tax base so that we're not just relying on certain types of property for schools and other types of things that are funded through property tax. It also will provide some economic stimulus to those counties when it's being built by having more people passing through doing their work to build it. So those are good things for rural, small communities. And so it looks like the wheels are more or less greased for the pipeline, both on the state and federal level. But this just expresses some more support from that. It'll be a letter that's sent from our state that says, "Go pipeline." So that's about that. Just to let you know that there are some things that are a little different than just regular bills. Some legislators call these things letters to Santa, but a very smart senator who carried another resolution did say that sometimes we don't have anybody else to write to. But these they can make a difference in just having the state on record saying what they support or what they don't support can be a good thing. So
one other thing I'm just going to throw out before I forget, quick update on Senate Bill 155, the seed bill. It passed the House Agriculture Committee earlier this week, so round of applause for that. That's a great thing. Because House Bill 2 was on the floor yesterday and was scheduled for today. I don't predict we'll see it on the entire House floor till early next week. So I would encourage everyone to please be contacting your representative, showing your support for Senate Bill 155 and the good things that it'll do for Montana agriculture. Secondly, the next stop after it gets through the House of Representatives is the governor's office. And so it's very important for Governor Bullock to be hearing from Montana farmers and ranchers supporting Senate Bill 155 because of what it will do to preserve and protect our industry. So please be making those contacts. Feel free to reach out to those two entities. If you have questions about how to do that, give us a shout. You can send us an email. You can comment on here. We're happy to help with that. For those of you who receive our action alerts, be watching your email inboxes for another action alert to contact the governor's office and your representative on this bill as well. That'll probably go out today to you all, so you'll have ample time over the weekend to work on it.
I would say there's no reason that you have to wait for that. Write up your own letter and send it, and just, it's really important that you express how it specifically affects you, what your personal thoughts are in support of Senate Bill 155.
Yep.
They need to hear from the country. Farmers and ranchers are really busy this time of year, and we sometimes get caught up and we just keep our heads down and work, which is awesome. It's a great...
That's what we do.
It's a great aspect to have in your personality. We need you to use your voice to express your support for this bill as well.
And speaking of hearing from the country, yes, your first priority should be to contact your own local representative. But we all know that there's a lack of agricultural representation in our legislative body. So once you've reached out to that local representative, feel free to, good question, Liv, I'll answer that in just a second. Once you've reached out to your local representative, you should feel free to reach out to some of our more urban legislators in the House and, make sure you include your contact information. Let them know who you are. Let them know that, you're not their constituent, but you are a farmer or a rancher who lives that life every day, and you just wanted to offer them some insight on this piece of legislation. It's okay to do that. So if you have questions about who those folks might be, again, let us know. Liv asked a great question. If you aren't already on the email list for the action alert, how can you start receiving those emails? Well, first and foremost, join Farm Bureau. If you're not already a voting or Century Club Farm Bureau member, let's make that happen today. You can join online at mfbf.org. And secondly, if you're already a Farm Bureau member and you're not receiving our action alerts, technology is a blessing and a curse, so a couple things. First of all, please do me a huge favor and check your junk email folder. In the unfortunate, I don't know why the internet would ever think that anything from Farm Bureau is junk, but
me neither.
That's not for us to decide, apparently. So first, if you aren't receiving action alert from Montana Farm Bureau Federation, please check your junk email in the unfortunate event that it went there, and you can get it coming to your inbox. Secondly, if it's not there, give Miss Janet a call at the office, and she will gladly and very quickly type your email into our database, and you'll be all entered up. You can also sign up to receive those action alerts on our website as well, under the Leg and Reg tab in the Action Center. So if anybody's got any questions about that, leave your comments or give somebody at the Farm Bureau office a shout.
And the number for our office is 406-587-3153. There you go. No excuses now.
Yay!
Well, it's a beautiful day out.
Yeah.
We need to get walking up to our next meetings. So if you don't have any more questions, we'll probably sign off.
Yeah. Last call. Bueller. Sorry, just kidding. If you're watching the replay later, though, like Nicole said earlier, throw those comments out there. We're happy to get back to you guys. And we will probably go ahead and sign off and scoot out the door to get on with our day. So hope everybody has a great Friday. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Enjoy this lovely springish weather we seem to be having in Montana, because it's still March, so it may not last. And we'll talk to you guys all next week. Bye.
See you later.